Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And on behalf of the Gutierrez Company, I'd like to welcome you to 4 Burlington Woods. It's obviously a beautiful building, right? And it was quite a pleasure coming in this morning and seeing a full parking lot. So thank you for coming. The Gutierrez Company has been very active in the region for the last 40 years. We've developed over 11 million square feet. And by and large, we need to thank the state and the towns that we work in and communities for being such great partners. A lot of these projects are very complex. They require a lot of input and assistance and help from various boards and agencies, all up and down from the local to the federal level. So on behalf of the Gutierrez Company, thank you to the towns and the state for all of your help in getting these projects completed. We also want to thank our consultants who are very involved with these projects, as well as our broker partners, and most importantly, our tenants. We're currently underway with a development for Millipore here in Burlington, which will be about 350,000 feet when it's finally completed. The first phase of that will be complete very shortly, and they'll start occupying this fall. So we're very excited about that. We're just breaking ground on a condominium project in Stoneham. We're going to break ground this week on a retail project out on 495, and we've got several large transactions underway along the Middlesex Route 3 corridor and then up in the 495 area. So we're, again, very grateful and appreciative of a lot of the folks in this room that have helped our success. And again, we want to thank you. I think the panel today is an extraordinary panel. There's some folks on the panel that have a lot of insight and a lot of knowledge and are very tied into what's happening real time. So I would suggest you ask a lot of questions, and I think you'll learn a lot from what these folks have to say. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Stephanie and get things going.
So I have a few more thank yous before we get the program going. First, thank you again to our sponsors and to the Gutierrez Company for hosting us this morning. I'm Stephanie Cronin. I'm the Executive Director of the Middlesex 3 Coalition. And for those of you who don't know, the Middlesex 3 Coalition is a regional economic development organization. We include 9 municipalities along the Route 3 corridor and about 70 business members. And our role is really to address business development concerns. It includes improving transportation, bringing transportation resources such as shuttles to area businesses and developments, promoting workforce and educational resources, working with utility companies, improving permitting, promoting healthcare resources and real estate developments, and marketing the Route 3 corridor. Our organization has been successful because of our partnerships, and we work well together to help businesses and to bring businesses to the area. And many of our public sector partners are in this room today, including President James Mabry and Judy Burke from Middlesex Community College, State Representative Ken Gordon, and representatives from Burlington, Bedford, Billerica, Chelmsford, Lexington, Tingsboro, Tewksbury, Westford, and the City of Lowell, and of course Peter Milano from the Massachusetts Office of Business Development. So thank you everyone for coming. If you'd like more information about the Middlesex 3 Coalition or the Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce, speaking of partnerships, that's a wonderful partnership as well too. And so we have information on the tables, so please see either me or Rick Parker, who is around here someplace right in front of me. Please see one of us for more information about that. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Jay Ash, the Secretary of Economic Development for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and this is how well we work together, and I'm stealing Judy Burke's presentation from last week up in Lowell. So Secretary Ash is responsible for directing and executing Governor Baker's agenda on housing and community development, job creation, business development, and business regulation. Under Secretary Ash's leadership, the Commonwealth has substantially increased its commitment to public infrastructure, revitalization of brownfields, workforce training equipment, and to the development and commercialization of emerging technology. He has led efforts to increase affordable housing productions and to redevelop and modernize public housing communities. Secretary Ash has played a leadership role in the recruitment and expansion of major employers. Many of them are in the room today. If you follow him on Twitter, you'll see he's everywhere. He's always listening and actively engaged. He's open to conversation, problem solving, and passionate about his work. I am very proud to introduce Secretary Jay Ash.
Thank you, Stephanie. Well, thanks, everyone. Great to be with you. I'm going to be moderating a panel, but before I moderate the panel, I thought I'd make a few comments. I do want to set the tone for today, so I am taking off my coat. And I'm going to welcome everybody else, well, the men, to feel free to join me in that, because it is a little bit warm in here. There we go. There's one. Thank you, Mr. President, for not making me be all by myself. It's great to be with all of you. I want to thank everyone who's organized this event. This is very impressive. I will be tweeting about this, and I'm very impressed to see all of you here. Many familiar faces. We've talked about opportunities in this region and others. Thank you for all your work, what you're doing here, and we look forward to continuing to work with you to produce success in the region. Middlesex 3, thank you, Stephanie, for having me here and for your continued advocacy on behalf of all the communities that you represent. We have a great working relationship with Middlesex 3 and continue to talk about important issues that are pressing up here. To the Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce, thanks for having me again. I've had an opportunity to speak to you at your regular meeting, and it's great to be able to work with you here. And to the New England Real Estate Journal, thank you for doing all that you've done for so many years. It's a go-to Bible, as we all know, for those of us who are interested in real estate. And it's great to see that not only are you covering stories, but you're helping to bring us all together and continue to connect us. So thank you for that. I'm here on behalf of Governor Baker to thank you all, but more importantly, I'm here on behalf of myself. The more that you do well, the better I look. So thank you all for making me look so good, because you all are doing great things. The governor grabbed me recently. He said, you know, Jay, everywhere I go, I hear good things about you. And I said, Governor, if you give me another $100 million to give away in grant money, you'll hear even better things about me. So the point there is that we have an economic development bill. Representative Gordon has been an important part, as well as other representatives and senators, and especially in the Middlesex 3 area. I have to mention Senator Donahue, who was the lead in the Senate side in negotiating an economic development bill that was adopted just a year ago. That economic development bill gives us the resources so that the governor can joke with me that we go around and make presentations to communities to help attract investment and ultimately to help residents prosper. So we're very excited about what's happening on the state level in terms of good public policy. Those of you who have heard me speak before, I talk about how the bipartisanship that exists up on Beacon Hill is making a difference here in Massachusetts. So we have a Republican governor and democratically controlled House and Senate, and yet we are able to work together and get good public policy done, like an economic development bill. I had a chance this week to speak to 4,000 legislators from around the country. They're here in Boston for their annual convention. And I talked a little bit about, imagine back in your state, a democratically controlled legislature giving a Republican governor $1 billion to go around the state and disperse. It's tough to imagine in some states, but here in Massachusetts, you don't even bat an eyelash because we're all working together the way we are. In addition to the major economic development bill that's been adopted, we have recently filed several other pieces of legislation that the legislature has suggested that has a very good likelihood of being adopted. One is a major piece around affordable housing, $1.5 billion to support affordable housing around the state. And another is an extension of the Mass Life Sciences Center, another 5 years, $500 million worth of investment in life sciences. So we continue to push to the envelope on the economy to try to hit areas that are particularly important to us. We think about the economic development bill as the overriding, kind of the umbrella for economic development in Massachusetts, and now we're looking at specific segments within it. Affordable housing, life sciences. We're currently working on a plan around advanced manufacturing, another one to support small businesses, a third to support emerging areas of technology like digital health and cybersecurity. So we like to think that we have the resources, both in terms of money, but also in terms of focus, to help continue to grow economies, and especially the economy around the Middlesex 3 area. Good news is it's not only us that are bragging. So I'll put on my little bit of, if I was a broker and I would put on my sales hat for a minute. #1 overall state announced just recently by Forbes. By U.S. News and World Report. #1 in innovation, #1 in education, which we have been for several years running. Most recently, last week, #1 data-driven economy, CNBC just came out with its poll of the 50 states, a report on its 50 states. Massachusetts had the largest jump in terms of business environment. We went from 20th up to 10th. And within that 10th, we're number one in technology and innovation. So there are lots of good things to be able to talk about, lots of reasons why we should be optimistic about what's happening here in the Middlesex 3 and the larger state of Massachusetts. And it's our plan to continue to work with the legislature, continue to work with local officials. Paul Cohen's here from Chelmsford, John Petrin from Burlington is here. We'll continue to work with local officials. Most importantly, we'll continue to work with all of you in the private sector to help you do what you do so well. So thanks all for your contributions, and again, thank you for making me look good through your work. I'm going to ask the panelists to come on up. And looking forward to this panel. So our panel number one, I think it's number one because we are number one, continuing with the number ones, not to make light of the second panel that will follow us. We'll be talking about real estate trends in the Middlesex 3 region. We have 5 distinguished panelists who are here, all of whom have had substantial contributions to the region, some as employers, some as brokers, some as property owners. And I'm going to ask each to introduce themselves. We'll go right down the line. Paul, you can start first. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business background, especially in the Middlesex 3 area.
Sure thing. Oh, forgot I was mic'd up there. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So thank you everybody for having me here today. Paul Asmer, I head up real estate and properties for Millipore Sigma, which is a division of Merck KGaA out of Germany. Some of you might know us as the Millipore Corporation. That's been in the Bedford, Burlington, Billerica area for many years. So I've been on board for 3 years taking care of their property, real estate, construction work. As you probably know, we're building a very large building in Burlington, 350,000 square feet, with a really good developer. I can't think of the name right now, but no, but Gutierrez has been great to us, and it's been a great relationship.
That's a $1 discount on your rent for every time that you mention Gutierrez.
Wow, I have a lot of mentions to go, Jay. But it's been a great run, and again, like I said, I've been here 3 years. Millipore Sigma has really grown and continues to grow in and around the suburbs, and excited to be here and talk to everybody today.
Thanks, Paul. John.
Thank you, Secretary. John Boyle. I'm with Cushman & Wakefield, which is the largest privately held real estate services firm in the world with about 46,000 employees. Not as big as this guy's firm. We're private, they're public. I oversee tenant representation at Cushman & Wakefield, and have spent a lot of time in this market. I have the privilege of working with Melanie McVeigh and John Profit on the tenant side with Kronos, but a lot of companies. Started my career in the late 80s down at the wonderful District, leasing space for Spalding Investment Company way back in the day. So really know this area, really know the market, and just privileged to be in this room because there's such exciting things, whether it's the developments that Gutierrez is doing or what Kronos did at 500,000 feet. This is a special time for all of us, and to recognize it, I think, is appropriate.
Thanks very much, Sean. Mark.
Good morning. Mark Reardon, partner at CBRE New England. For the last 25 and a half years, I know you could tell my picture there's a little bit 20 years ago, but the last 25
Not at all. No.
last 25 years I've worked up and down Route 3 representing a lot of the landlords and the tenants, and I had the privilege of working with John and Jonathan on the Kronos deal in Lowell. More importantly, I'm also on the board of the Middlesex 3 Foundation, which Stephanie Cronin is a phenomenal advocate for this area up here.
Thanks. Jonathan.
Sure, John Profit, and I run global real estate for Kronos. I started my career with the Flatley Company and spent about 10 years there. It was one of the best experiences one could ever have. And moved on to Cambridge, worked for Monitor Group. So about 5 years ago, thanks to John Boyle, I moved over to Kronos. It's been great. And we're doing thanks to many partners in this room, including Mark and John. We're doing a great project up in Lowell, you too, Secretary. So it's been wonderful.
Good morning, everyone. Andrew Gallinaro with National Development, and I always say this, but despite that very lofty name, we're a proud local company based here or nearby in Newton, and we've been very active up and down the Middlesex 3 corridor in Burlington and Bedford primarily. John mentioned, glad to hear him refer to it as the district. The formerly New England Executive Park is one of our larger projects just up the street here. We've also had experience developing housing and several other office projects in and throughout the region as well.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here. I'll start the questioning off. I'm going to ask the panel some questions, but I want to make sure that we leave time to open it up to your questions as well. So please be thinking about what we can answer for you. To our brokers and owners, what are the real estate trends in Massachusetts and the Middlesex 3 region? Who's coming to the region? What types of companies or industries or needs? And why are, I think I'll stop there. So trends and who's coming?
Maybe I'll start. Trends, definitely, I think as everyone knows, everybody's looking for a vibe. Everybody wants space that has energy. That is why I think places like the district have done well, because it's all about retention and recruiting. And, you know, Cronos' deal up at Cross Point, and 1.2 million square foot complex, a big complex. So I think amenities used to be important. They're no longer important. They're called urban conveniences, and you got to have them. So I think that's a trend. Density is a trend. You know, 180, 150 feet a person, benching. Problems with parking is a trend. And I think coming to Massachusetts this morning, I was on the phone all morning with a company that's out of state that's coming to Massachusetts. The life science, as evidenced by the great deal this guy did, the life science sector in this area is second to none. So companies coming from, we are the leader in the world in that area. So the transaction I was doing this morning was a life science company. So a lot of life sciences companies coming to this area. We are known as the leader. You can't replace MIT and Harvard, and it's on fire. My 32 years in this business, I've never seen anything like it. It's deep, it's wide, and you got to play well. And people will, as evidenced by a gentleman to my right, if you can't play quickly and fast, like the Gutierrez companies, you're going to lose. It's all about speed. Cronos moved 500,000 feet in, like, I don't even know, like, what, 6 months or something? It's crazy. 1,500 people. So the ability for all the service providers in the room to perform with excellence has never been to where it is right now. And the wheat is separating from the shaft, and who can play and who's just okay. So those would be my thoughts. I don't know about Mark.
There was a rumor that you were actually helping Kronos move boxes as part of that. Is that true?
No.
Full service broker?
Yeah, we do it all. We do it all.
Okay, all right. I must have misheard that then. Mark, you?
I think if the word I would describe where we are in this market is it's transition. 25, 30 years ago, this market was pretty much known as the telecommunications world. You know, you went through different cycles of Wang, Apollo, digital, then it went to the other elements of that after. And then when that whole market went down, there was never an industry that really took over all these empty buildings. What we're in right now is we're in a much diverse, there's more diversity in terms of the companies that are up there. You look at Millipore on one end, which is a pharma biotech firm. You look at a software company. You look at a company called Innovive, who just bought a building in Billerica from California. And there's examples all over the place of that. So I think we're still in a period of time where we're transitioning from single focus in telecommunications into a diverse, which will be very, very healthy for years to come, but it's going to take some, as Paul Cohen will tell you, it'll take a little bit of pain and suffering to get there, but it'll be a better place once it's done.
Before I get down to Andrew, to both of you, John, you mentioned life sciences. I play a game with myself when I talk to life sciences companies. How long will it take before they mention Kendall Square? I'm wondering what you're hearing, specifically about Middlesex 3. Do you have that same conversation with life sciences companies and need to draw them out here, or do they already know that there's great resources out here and companies like Millipore that have planted a flag here, and therefore are they already looking for space here?
So we're fortunate that we represent Biogen, and we work with Pfizer and a lot of big users. Everybody does want to be in Kendall Square. The rents in Kendall Square are $80 a foot, and there's no space. So I think, as you know, Paul can attest, the ability to find talent here. It may not be as cachet and not as funky and as cool, and somebody might have an issue. Well, that's all well and good, but if you cannot find real estate and you need real estate, that's a problem. So I think the Seaport, you know, is making some transactions from those tenants that are saying, okay, we'll look there. But Biogen's a client. They did a $200,000 foot deal in Waltham. Actually, they did a $320,000 foot deal in Waltham. Then they moved back. Then they came back to Waltham. So I think that you're going to see more and more companies like Paul's saying that Burlington really works, Route 3 really works, and it just, Boston and Cambridge is turning into one place. It's not just Kendall Square, Cambridge. It's greater Cambridge, greater Boston. But I would defer to Paul as to their ability to recruit and retain.
Mark, do you want to?
I term that the NBA effect, right? So you see what's going on in the NBA right now, where the Golden State Warriors are just the team to play. Well, that's Cambridge. So all the other teams are all the other markets that are competing for those type of players. And the municipalities and towns, you have to have sewer, you have to have some of the infrastructure that's in place to attract those companies. But we're going to have to compete in different ways. It won't be head-to-head because we'll never win against Cambridge, because it's just, we don't have MIT, we don't have Harvard. And we have to rally around University of Lowell because there's some great technologies, great scientists, great people from there that hopefully we can rally around.
You know, you say that about Harvard and MIT, but what I continue to talk to companies about is where we sit or stand right now, we're only 13 miles away from the Seaport District. And so you and I were talking a little bit about foreign investment. Others were talking to me about foreign investment. Do you find that the foreign investment that's coming in understands that it's only 13 miles away? Or is those of us who have grown up in the region think, oh my God, we're going to go all the way out to 128 or heaven forbid all the way out to 495?
Right. I think that it's easy for anybody to, from the outside who doesn't know what we know in terms of where we live, to just rally around the Seaport because it's been marketed very well, or rally around Cambridge because it's been marketed well, or MIT or Harvard. We just haven't done an effective job, in my humble opinion, to make that the point when people think about Massachusetts, this is the area they want to go.
Okay, we'll get into marketing in a little while. Andrew, property owner around here, what do you see happening? And I want to compliment you first on my first stop this morning was at Prest. For those of you who haven't been to Prest, my new favorite comfort food restaurant. As an alum of Spalding and Sly myself, my wife was a Spalding and Slyer at New England Executive Park 150 years ago. Oh, I didn't say that. Go tell her I said that. Turn that camera off. But I remember the old New England Executive Park, and to call it exciting would be lying. So you've done an amazing job there. So tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you. We're very proud of that. We're very proud of Prest and all our retailers there. We've been very fortunate to attract a really high-quality group and feel that it's gone a long way towards, kind of upping the game, down there, and it was needed. So just to quickly pick up on something Mark said, because I absolutely agree. If you take a step back and you think about Boston in more of a national context, actually where we sit today, you're absolutely right. In most cities and most MSAs would actually really be considered part of the metropolitan area. So I do think one of our challenges or one of our opportunities as sort of the inner suburban ring, and we like to refer to Burlington as the inner suburban ring, is to position ourselves as really connected to the city, because 10 or 15 miles really does afford you the opportunity to get to the airport quickly, to have great access to the schools, et cetera. So I completely agree with that point. And again, I would just echo everything that John and Mark have said about the trends. We're certainly seeing that. We haven't been terribly active in the life science sector, but from an office standpoint, they're absolutely right in that what we're seeing is companies are demanding, and really they're demanding because their employees are demanding a more vibrant and active workplace. And that's really within the context of what is like this gravitational pull towards the city. And it's Cambridge to some extent, but it's also the Seaport and the Back Bay District. And I think that the difference between office and lab is that there actually is office inventory available in the urban core. And so for many of these municipalities, and I think actually Burlington's a great example of a forward-thinking municipality that's positioned itself in a way where you take a project like ours, which was dated and antiquated and had an antiquated zoning overlay, to it. They were forward-thinking enough to allow someone like ourselves to add the density and add it in the form of a mix of different uses, which could really begin to urbanize and allow us to meet the needs of our tenants. So, we're seeing a lot of small tenant demand, but whether it's a small tenant or a large tenant, by and large, they're really saying the same thing, and that they're looking for a viable alternative to being in a more urban-like environment.
We've seen the transformation of New England Executive Park to the district. Something I wish I could replicate everywhere. Is it replicable everywhere, or is it something unique to that property that has led to the success you've had?
Well, I think the answer is it depends, which is a tough answer, I know. But again, that property had many inherent advantages. One was just from the development standpoint, the topography, the sheer scale of it. It's 60 acres. Its location, adjacent to Leahy and Burlington Mall, its visibility, its access, et cetera. And as I mentioned, really benefited from the flexibility of the zoning overlay there. And so I would say that it can be replicated, yes, but there are several ingredients which are key. And I think one is scale, and two is a cooperative municipality that sort of gets the forward-thinking vision of a more dynamic, more dense, mixed-use environment in the suburbs, which is very, very different from the traditional single-use environment that has often existed in some of these older industrial office environments. So
I'm glad you highlighted that.
Yeah.
No doubt it'll be talked about in the second panel, but I just want to congratulate the town of Burlington, the people here, John and others, that it's exactly that. There are communities that are still holding on to what their concept of commercial activity was in the 70s and 80s, and I'm really afraid for those communities. I talk to them a lot about looking at the district and seeing how mixed use can inject life not only into a property but into an entire community. So congratulations on that, and congratulations to the town of Burlington people. So to our employees here, first of all, thank you for your commitment to the Commonwealth. I've had the opportunity to be to many of your functions and been able to celebrate so many good things, and we're very grateful that you chose Massachusetts to continue to make your expansions. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what went through your process. In both cases, you could have gone anywhere in the country and world, quite frankly, and you decided to stay put here and continue to grow your roots here. So, Paul, I'll start with you, and then down to John. Talk to us a little bit about what went into your thinking. What do you think the strengths are here in this region that had you decide that this is where you wanted to make your major investment?
So, Millipore has been a lifer here in the Bedford area. So we've always had roots here in the suburbs, like I said, Bill Ricker and Bedford, Burlington. So I think the decision was more about the vision of the CEO and what he wanted to have. So he was looking for a very collaborative space. We knew we needed a lot of space, and it was about a matter of trying to figure out how to co-locate employees that were already based in and around the Middlesex area. So we did a lot of looking. We did look at other places. We actually looked outside of Massachusetts. We did the gamut throughout master planning. But at the end, it was all about trying to find a place that was convenient, that had a lot of amenities, and that gave us the space and flexibility that we really were looking to find. And we found that in Burlington, in the space that we were able to acquire there with Gutierrez. And I think we hit a real home run, because it was really, we did a lot of density studies of our employees to try to find the best space that inconvenienced the fewest people, right? Every time you move a building or a space, I always like to say 50% of the people are happy because it's closer to them, and 50% of the people are unhappy because it's farther away. So we did a lot of due diligence on that. So that had a lot to do with it. Proximity to where we were today. The highways, although can be trafficy, they are main roads to get to where we need to go. And again, the space that we needed really enabled us to create the CEO's vision of an innovative technology-based biotech company. And we were very excited to be in Burlington, to put a flag in the ground there with the hopes that we attract some other life science companies to come in also.
Yeah, I think you will. A lot of people took notice of where you decided to make an investment, and everything else is happening in Burlington, everything else is happening in the region. It's made it easier for us to talk to other life sciences companies about why they should make a move.
Sorry, Jay, I just want to say that you talk about trends. I think one of the trends I also see too, and I would defer to these gentlemen, they know more than I do because I spent a lot of my years in the city, but it seems that maybe 10 years ago, developers, owners weren't as anxious to happy to put lab space in because it was really expensive. Nowadays, they're more than happy to put lab space in for life science companies, tech companies that are coming in the area. So I see that as a real great trend in this area. Again, I defer to you guys that do this every day, but it seems that when we look for space or have clients that might be looking for space, there's really no issue about, well, if lab space is expensive, what do we do with it after you leave? That really doesn't seem to play a role. And again, Burlington's been great to us in terms of helping us through the process with that too.
Great, John. I know you can say the same thing about Lowell, so I'll turn it over to you. And again, thanks for making the commitment to Lowell. I know you were looking around the country and around the world at possible locations. So, what was it about Lowell? What was it about Middlesex 3 that you decided to stay here?
So we started out because we had a great home in Chelmsford. We've been there 17
You hear?
years.
Can you hear John back there? Is this microphone?
Yeah? Okay, we're good now.
There you go. Great.
So we had a great home in Chelmsford, had been there for 17 years, but the problem is we were growing too quickly. That's a great problem to have, but we were in 3 buildings, we were gonna be in 4 buildings, and quite frankly, would have been in 5. And we really wanted to get under one roof. So we took a look around, as we said, we did have options outside of the state, outside of the country. We looked at the district, we looked at Third Ave, but it was really John and Mark who said, hey, you guys gotta get over to Cross Point and take a look.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you. You got to get over to Cross Point and take a look, and we did. And we did the things like Paul talked about. We did demographic studies. And while we often see that companies go where their CEO lives, we actually found out that our folks all live north and northwest of Chelmsford or Lowell. So probably one of the only dozen or so people who got a longer commute with our move is our CEO. But he made it very clear that our people have made a commitment to Kronos, made a commitment to where they live, have built their families and homes there. So it made sense for us. When we got into the building, it was a great partnership. Folks like Allison Lammy and Maria Dickinson, Kevin Coughlin, yourself, assured us that this is a great place for us. They'll make it work for us. If you have a problem with permitting, call me. And that's exactly what they did. So it's been a great process. We're about 90% built out, about 70% of the folks who moved in. And John Boyle's coming over this weekend to help us with the rest of the
Yeah.
So, thanks.
Bringing my 2 boys.
That's it. So.
Well, what we hear regularly from businesses is their need to attract millennials to their workplace. Frankly, I sometimes get a little bit upset when I hear about, well, millennials want this. Well, that's nice because baby boomers want something else and we're not getting it. So, but knowing how important the millennial workforce is, I know that there's not a red line stop anywhere near you. Red, orange, green, nothing up. You do have the benefit of commuter rail, but tell us a little bit about your thoughts about attracting a workforce and to the extent that you might have had to offset some of the negatives about being away from rapid transit, about being away from Boston and Cambridge or Dorchester or Chelsea. I'll throw Chelsea in there. John, is that okay? No. Tell us a little bit about what your thinking was and what you're doing to attract the workforce.
I'm not sure what we're going to talk about on panels when the millennials grow up, because it seems to be a hot topic on every panel that everybody sits on. It could be about trends in the workplace, it could be about generations, it could be about urban versus suburban, but the millennials always come up. I guess the story I tell a lot is that I hate to tell you, but millennials grow up. So they grow up, and sometimes, so the quick story I tell you is I have a young man I know, I've known since he was a little boy, and he was real excited after he graduated college. He moved to South Boston. 4 other guys, he was only paying $1,000 a month, his share, with no parking space, but it was great. The world was great, right? So he called me a month ago, he's 29, he says, I got some news. I said, you're not in trouble. He said, no, I'm not in trouble. I said, what's up? He says, I'm getting married. I said, oh, good for you. How's she gonna like living with the 4 like that in the apartment? He said, I just bought a house in Woburn. So I think that underscores a little bit about what's going on, right? Is that everybody grows up. I also talk a lot about that people talk about amenities. I know we talked a little bit about what, amenities now in 5 years are going to be the standards of what people expect. So I say all that to say, we're out here in the suburbs. We don't have a problem attracting people. Maybe we're not looking for the MIT or the graduates coming right out the door, but we're looking for the solid people that lay their own flag in the suburbs. We have no problem. We're growing. I know Scott and Doug love to hear me say we're growing because that means we'll probably need more space at some point. But everybody, it just depends on what you're looking for and how you're looking for it. But again, I think if we do things like they're doing in the district and like Gutierrez is doing for us and providing the kinds of things that people want in their workday, I really think that the suburbs just really are the next stop for everybody to get to.
That's great. Well, if you're looking for workforce, Middlesex Community College,
Absolutely.
or as we like to call them, the MIT of the Middlesex 3 region, can provide you with a great workforce, and President Mabry's here. Jonathan, same.
Similarly with policy, we tend not
Yeah,
to
you do.
first, the person who's looking for their first job, it's kind of their second or third job. They're growing up a little bit, they want to move to the suburbs, start a family, buy a home. So while there are some folks who do reverse commute up, that's not necessarily everyone we're hiring. And you're right, we have a great opportunity to hire folks from UMass Lowell. We have a strong co-op program. We have about 60 interns working right now. And I think it also helps if you're a great workplace. We've been fortunate to be one of the best workplaces for several years now. And you got to create differentiators, and that's how we're managing through it.
How many?
But I also
Yeah, go, John.
I also think, Jay, that we get like all out of whack. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Northern California, in Apple's in Cupertino, and Google's in Mountain View. These are all suburban locations. And that's where the greatest amount of talent is not in an urban environment. So there's this like, well, I gotta be, well, Apple's a pretty good company and they're in Cupertino. And they're not in the city. I mean, they have some space in San Francisco. So I think we just need to recognize where the talent really is, and that's certainly with Paul's firms and John's firm, and there's some really unbelievable companies, and not so because frankly in Boston, as it relates to great corporations doing innovative work, cards on the table, most of them are not in the city of Boston. The great yes, GE's gonna be moving there, but when you look at the companies that are really innovative in corporations, a lot of them are in the suburbs and in Cambridge. They're not in Boston. So I think we need to recognize we play very similar to a Northern California, and it's worked out pretty well for them.
Yeah, I would agree. I get to talk about the quality of life, and again, looking at Massachusetts and the superlatives, Massachusetts has been ranked #1 in quality of life. And so what you have to offer here in Middlesex 3, housing costs, a great environment, access to great restaurants and shopping, tremendous recreation opportunities. It's a whole package, right? And it's important to know. We have about 20 minutes left on the panel. I have plenty of questions, but I want to make sure that I get some questions from the floor. So does anyone have a question that they'd like to ask of any of the panelists? Going once. There we go. Go right ahead.
When you say urban conveniences, are there top 3?
I heard half of that question. When you say urban
Urban convenience.
conveniences, are they the top 3 kind of conveniences or amenities that we'd
So
be looking for?
I was on a tour 2 weeks ago in Colorado, in a suburban building in Colorado. And the people were looking for about 100,000 feet. And then we went into the cafeteria, and the cafeteria provider came out, and he was dressed in a smock, and he was like, let me tell you about farm to table. And he went off, and then he brought the chef in, and he brought everybody in. The food at these places, Google, work with, they serve 3 meals a day. You can't be any more than 50 feet from food at Google. And it is excellent food. So #1 is food. And if you look at, John's, the cafeteria is unbelievable. It's not a cafeteria at Cross Point. And then you look at, Tavern on the Square and the restaurant. So food is #1, and it has to be good. And so therefore, the tenants' input, how is the chicken sandwich? I want to look at the chicken, it's crazy. I mean, so food is #1. Second is obviously fitness and working out. And then third, when we did the Clark's deal, which was down in Waltham, how far is it to walk to a bar in the district? Walking to bars, getting a drink. If I want to meet somebody for a drink, how far do I have to walk? What's my walkability score? How far is it to get a martini versus a beer? These are questions that I can't believe that I'm answering, but it's like, with... I didn't know them. There's 500, how many bar stools are in the district? 596. He knows that. Because those questions are coming up. How many bar stools can we walk to? So everybody wants to be able to get a drink, be able to get good food, and to be able to work out. Those would be my three that I don't know, I would defer to Paul or anybody else.
Yeah, good.
From a user perspective, I 100% agree. So food is a big topic every day, and I'm sure most people here go through it. So it's the ability to give good food at a good price. The fitness center, you hit them, you really did hit them. And then I would just call them social conveniences, right? How easy is it, I won't say a bar, but how easy is it to get to a store? Can I walk down the street? Can I get together with coworkers right after work someplace, or even during work? So
like what
I think those
Gutierrez
three
is
things,
doing at the base of
Yep.
Wheeler Road, they're putting in, as Doug's around here somewhere, they're putting something so you can walk down Wheeler Road and get, have those walkable urban amenities. That was something that just didn't, I worked in New England Executive Park in the 80s, you didn't think about, geez, how can I walk to get a drink? And those type of things where you want to get 10 people together, go to get beer or go get, pizza after work. Those things, the walkability factor was not something 10 years ago that was that big.
I usually staff that out, John, so that's not as important to me. But Jonathan, top employer, amenities are an important part. I was particularly moved by the basketball court that's being built at Cross Point. I hope to be playing there at some point. Tell us a little bit about
Memorial, yes.
Memorial?
No, I think like everyone's saying here, they're no longer, which amenities do you have? It's not a choice anymore. You have to have these things. So we built out an amenity floor, actually, and that's what it was called during the development stage. So it has a gaming center. It has John called it a cafe. We prefer barista, John.
Barista.
Yes, thank you. But it does. It has a full coffee bar. It has a barista. It has informal meeting places. It has a hoops court. So you got to do these things to attract the millennials. If that's what folks want. They want a kind of this live, play, work environment, and you have to give it to them. It's not a choice anymore.
After visiting one of these companies, I went back to my office suite. Felt bad for my employees, so I took down 4 circa 1970 dividers and created an open space. Took out a couple of the metal tables that I had and put them in the middle. And think about film noir. There's this light that you would see in a police station in an interrogation is on top of the metal table. We laugh about that, but my employees love it. My staff love it, and I feel bad for them because I don't let them out to the rest of you to see what you're missing. But just that little added touch made a difference for us. So I want to thank all the taxpayers in here for all that you do to support state employees. Any other questions? Another question from the floor, sir.
How much is the cost of availability of housing an issue for your location? And what are the gaps? What's missing?
Relation of housing to your employees and development opportunities.
So, obviously when we're doing a site search, we look into that a lot, and particularly with, we were involved with Kronos doing a deal, a technology center, which actually went to Indianapolis. So that does play a role. It is a negative thing for Greater Boston. So when you're looking at technology companies, as an example, and they're looking to do a technology center, we're not going to win in the call center deal. Oftentimes, maybe some areas, different municipalities in the state may, but up this quarter, it's a real challenge, to be perfectly honest with you. You're not moving to Massachusetts because of affordable housing. The fact of the matter is that it's a huge problem for the state. That said, I think as evidenced by Paul and John's deal, they can get talent that they want here probably easier, frankly, than being closer to the city, because it is unbelievably expensive to live in and around the city of Boston. So what I think brings a lot of people to Boston is our innovative capabilities. And cards on the table, these two guys have, if not thousands, a few thousands of people in places like India and globally. So it's a real challenge, but that's not why I think people move to Greater Boston or this area.
Andrew?
That's actually a great question. I would echo everything John said, and it actually speaks to another trend that we're seeing. And If any of you read the Washington Post, there's a really intriguing article this past Sunday about several suburban area office parks and how, in their own way, they've tried to reimagine themselves and have actually integrated multifamily housing as part of these developments. And I think it's, to some extent, you see the fabulous development that Norblum is doing here on 3rd Avenue. That's starting to happen here, but I actually think that's the next level of what this region can do to address that exact issue. It's not always everyone's favorite topic to develop more dense housing and in particular rental housing. But with that said, I think it's the most efficient and thoughtful way to address the affordability issue. And, frankly, in a lot of ways, address some of our other issues, which is the infrastructure and the traffic, congestion matter. When you have people that can live nearer where they work, it just frees up a lot of capacity and is an efficient form of land use.
That's a good point. So that CNBC study that I talked about that had Massachusetts number 10 up from number 20, we were number 47 in affordability. Nobody's surprised here. A little while ago, I decided to take a closer look at this, and so I looked at cities across the United States. I'm going to let you all play a little bit of a game here. The most affordable city to be in across the United States, think about it, most affordable city across the United States is Birmingham, Alabama. Anyone want to trade the local economy for Birmingham, Alabama's economy? So Birmingham, Alabama is a middle city. There are 241 middle cities, and Birmingham, Alabama came in at 232 in terms of economic success. So we do have a housing issue, and we continue, that's why the governor has filed a $1.5 billion affordable housing plan. But we have to remember that it's about talent first, second, and third. And the reason why GE decided to come here to Massachusetts, to Boston, was because they couldn't think of another place that they could continue to grow and be the 21st century company they wanted to be without the talent that we offer here. So, other questions or comments?
I'm from Westford, and I'm seeing something. I'm curious if you guys see this as a trend. We have companies like Red Hat and Akamai who are kind of doing what I would call like a dumbbell.
Yep.
We have their corporate headquarters out in the suburbs, but they're opening up small offices. Well, Akamai is kind of different, but they have they have feet in both the suburbs and the city. I'm wondering if that's just my town or if you see that as a trend.
So the question about companies bifurcating, sending a little bit of their, or a lot of their research and development corporate HQ to Boston and Cambridge, and then doing manufacturing or other things, other work, design work, back office work elsewhere.
Yeah,
Mark?
I see that as, it's all dependent upon what size of company it is, but I see that continuing, again, because that's the sexy place to be. That's where Google is, that's where Microsoft is, that's where all of the major employers of that technology, of the technology world is there. So I think you're going to continue to see that. But you're also going to continue to see some of those companies that can't afford to be there start to come out here. We've seen this in different cycles. Cronos was not always up in Chelmsford. They were on 128, as is a lot of those other companies that are up there. So there's a push and a pull. Companies that can afford it will stay and grow in Cambridge, and companies that can't will come out.
Yeah, particularly the bigger companies. It's just not palatable to have, if some companies, Akamai just did a 650,000 foot lease, but they're just well served to have people up here. So I think you're going to see at $90 triple net, $100 triple net, $500 a month to park. It's just, it's really hard. So I think having that connection is fine. 30,000 feet, 40, 50,000 feet in Boston, 150,000 feet in Westford, Red Hat, they can put their flag on Melcher Street and sort of say, hey, we're in the Seaport, and then they can, but have their big presence up in Westford. So I think actually it's probably a good thing for the suburbs because they're not moving everyone there. It's just not palatable, but having some balance to be able to, recruit and retain.
Yeah, and that plays into a strength. So another number one for Massachusetts, number one most diverse economy. And so you talked about diversity earlier, Mark, but the fact that, John, as you're pointing out, that's an advantage that you can get to where all all the research and development people want to be, but you have great space that is available for everything else. Really proximate is a good thing as well. One more question from the audience. Yep, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kevin Curran. I'm a local property owner, small scale. I'd like to hear your comments, maybe Jay, on the chance in the next decade or two of us having world-class mass transit out here at 128. I mean, I travel the world, I look at what we put up with here, and frankly, it's second tier. So I look at the investment we did with Big Dig and how it opened up Seaport. It seemed to be a win-win. Intuitively, I think we need much better mass transit. When I talk to tenants who are coming out of Cambridge, they want to know how do they get here? And a lot of them, millennials don't have cars. My daughter gave up her car. So I'd like to hear some thoughts on that.
Sure, and I'm going to ask those of you who have to deal with that on a regular basis. You want to go ahead?
I think it's a great question. I'll just mention quickly, this is not probably the longer term big picture solution, but we've been fortunate enough to partner with Stephanie and the Middlesex 3 Coalition, and we actually have a private dedicated shuttle service from Alewife at the end of the Red Line to our property here in Burlington. And so that's actually a major investment on our part, but we felt it was important as much as anything to signal to folks that we might not otherwise even get the time of day from, that there is an opportunity here to bring folks that live in the city out to the suburbs for just that same reason, because people don't want to own a car, they don't want to use their car every day. So I'm not sure that's the long-term solution, but it is one way that we've tried to address the problem. It's complicated.
No doubt you're thinking, I'm a small property owner, I can't do that. And I have small companies, and they're not going to be able to do that either. So understand that's a challenge. Mark, go ahead.
Kevin, I think Amazon's working on a drone to get people back and forth to work, so maybe it's 5 years away, but...
So the good news and bad news. The good news is that we're spending billions of dollars a year to update what we have and to make some expansions. The bad news is that even with the billions of dollars, we have a long way to go before we're going to be doing massive mass transportation to the Middlesex 3. So every community, every region I go to says the same thing. We need better public transportation. We agree. The problem is that the better public transportation includes making sure that the public transportation that you currently have works and is up to date. And we're very excited about the advances that we're making with the MBTA. You have a regional transportation system up here, and there are other regional transportation systems around. In terms of public transportation, we look to work with them. We're going to spend something like $3 or $4 billion a year on infrastructure and transportation in general. In terms of highways in 128, I never hit traffic on 128. Then again, I leave at 5:30 in the morning every morning, and so we realize, so the good news, the fresh news is that traffic is a sign of vitality. We're happy that there are so many people that are working here. We're happy that there are so many great companies that are locating here, but we recognize that the areas that need to be improved. Secretary Pollack, who I work with very closely, Secretary of Transportation, and I continue to talk about the opportunities around existing infrastructure to enhance that infrastructure. Creating new infrastructure on top of that is going to be difficult, but we certainly see opportunities to enhance interchanges and, quite frankly, ask the local folks to do stuff on the local roadway system. So sometimes the bottleneck is getting out of the property and onto the major highway network. Last 2 years, with all of you and with others, we've committed $35 million to this region, to the communities of the Middlesex 3, to help with infrastructure improvements, including supports for the Millennial building that's going up. So the opportunity to look at, I'm sorry, I caught myself, Millipore building. The opportunity to partner with people that are making investment is an important one. So now you're an existing property owner. It's going to be tough for us to say to you, we're going to be able to fix something. But as these guys continue to grow, as developers continue to come to us with opportunities, and as municipalities continue to say that we will welcome more growth, that's an opportunity for us to then focus on other transportation opportunities. Last points from anyone. Give you each a last point, and the last point is going to be around this. If you had $1 to spend, you had $1 to spend, would you spend it on transportation? Would you spend it on housing? Would you spend it on workforce? Would you spend it on other amenities? or would you buy a Powerball ticket tonight for $307 million? So, John, we'll start with you and work our way down.
That's a tricky one.
You want me to start?
I think I would spend it on transportation.
Yeah, you want to amplify it? So just on that,
Yeah,
how
I
do
mean, I
you,
think that, well, I do think, you know.
you're successful in attracting companies out here, notwithstanding the transportation issue, so
Yeah, I do think that the transportation thing is a problem. You know, I go back to BART, I go back to Cupertino, I go back to the place that everybody, you know, they're here and they're there. We need to work at that. I think that that is a problem, and I do think that your daughter is not alone. There's a lot of people that don't have cars, and that for this group, not Seaport, not Cambridge, is something that is a problem, and it needs to be addressed.
Mark.
I would spend that money on branding and marketing this
Yeah,
area.
that's
I think there are enough benefits, as you can see from these two wonderful companies that are up here and many of the others, that we have a lot of benefits in this region, but I don't think we do a very good job of marketing it and letting the world know that. That's
awesome.
my
Thanks.
opinion.
John.
I think workforce for us, you know, of course, these guys want to attract the folks, but we already have, we just want to continue to build our workforce and support our workforce, and for us, that's what our company's all about, is our people, so.
I'm glad we're getting consensus here.
I would spend it on housing, and I actually,
You get the Powerball ticket, my friend. Go ahead.
I actually think it may be the way to get the biggest bang for the buck. And I mean, I agree transportation is probably the biggest issue, but I think that by solving the housing and again, allowing people to live affordably near where they work, you'll start to address the transportation issue as well.
Well, you were actually the deciding vote.
Yeah,
See, so if you grab one of those four.
So it's interesting. So I'm torn between actually transportation and workforce. So I agree. I think for us, we just continue to need to grow our workforce and invest in our workforce. I think when you do that, everything else goes from there. But I agree. I mean, I'm on 128 every single day, and it is a problem. And so traffic and transportation. So, but I'd have to lean to workforce if I'm.
The correct answer is yes.
Yes.
All right?
All of the above.
And this is what we struggle with. We would like to be able to focus on just one area. All of you come up and say, geez, if you could just do something about this, that'd be great. But we do recognize that all of these areas combine to make for a healthy region and a vibrant economy. So it's easier when we're talking about bigger projects because we can take some of the return that the state can earn from those bigger projects and plow them back in. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't focus on people who have more modest properties and be concerned about that. And so that's where we work with our local partners to try to make a difference. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to congratulate and thank our panelists for a great discussion this morning. And thank you for all being so attentive. And again, thank you for your contributions here in the Middlesex area.